but the primary focus was on Iran. And I'm going to be explicitly clear to the mullahs that are oppressing the Iranian people and sponsoring terror around the world. The United States of America and Israel will do anything it takes to prevent you from ever having a nuclear weapon. Now, preferably this could be done through diplomatic channels and through sanctions, but if not, every single option is on the table with President Trump and with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
They understand. First of all, most Americans don't realize, Maria, that Ukraine has the fourth most natural resources of any nation state in the world. 4, and there's a little over north of 200 countries. So they have a lot of resources, and I love the president's viewpoint on that to say, look, Ukraine, we've done a lot for you. Why don't you do a little bit for us?
It's a bad sign that, one, his own Secretary of Defense is negotiating against himself as opposed to against Russia in his first week in office. And number 2, that they're going to Saudi Arabia to talk directly to Vladimir Putin, thereby platforming him without inviting the Ukrainians to these negotiations on their own future. There can be no negotiations with Russia that are not met simultaneously by continued support for Ukraine's war-making capability and also by inclusion of Ukraine in the process.
And when you see the Democrats push back against an examination of the reckless spending of the Biden administration that wrought inflation across our country for 4 years, you recognize that they don't understand what we're trying to do and what the voters want. What the voters want is control of spending in Washington and visibility into all of the spending programs that the Biden administration was running.
Here's what's going on. In 2017, Donald Trump passed a massive but temporary tax cut giveaway to billionaires and giant corporations to the tune of $2 trillion. Now that's $2 trillion that we could have used to solve our housing crisis and slash childcare costs. This year, those wealthy tax breaks are ending. But instead of letting that tax relief for the rich just expire, Republicans want to double down. Right now, Republicans in Congress are scrambling for ways to find $5 trillion to make these tax giveaways to the wealthy permanent.
When President Biden, right before he left office, gave billions, and I say with a B, billions of dollars to Africa, when Americans in Florida, in North Carolina, and California are hurting from natural disasters, you're going to give money to Africa? Why are you doing that? It's because Biden obviously cares more about Africans than he does about his own Americans that are hurting. So we should be focused on America first.
The Secretary of Treasury handed him a piece of paper that essentially required Ukraine to hand over about 50% of its mineral reserves to the United States, simply in payment of the support that we've already given, which we've given because they were a democratic country attacked by Putin and the Russian forces. I mean, can you imagine FDR in the middle of World War II saying to Churchill, you know, we're not going to continue to help you until you turn over half of your coal and mineral reserves. That's not how you behave when you want to support a friend who's under attack by an authoritarian like Putin.
That's exactly what just happened in New York City. Eric Adams was under indictment for serious corruption. And the Trump administration, the Trump White House, went to him and said, regardless of whether you've committed crimes, we will dismiss the charges as long as you pledge loyalty to Donald Trump and specifically his immigration policy. They cut a deal. They were pretty unapologetic about it. Eric Adams literally went on TV to announce the deal, and now the charges are dropped.
It is imperative that the rest of the hostages be returned as soon as possible and that the remains of those killed be returned with dignity so that their families may have closure. And I'm grateful that the Trump administration is making this a priority. But Mr. President, Howard Lutnick's greatest business achievement is not building his own success or building up a company. It's rebuilding Cantor Fitzgerald over the last 24 years. Because Cantor Fitzgerald occupied the 101st through 105th floors of the World Trade Center North Tower. On September the 11th, 2001, every single employee who was in the office died. 658 people, including Howard's brother.
It's really alarming what we're hearing. You know, the University of Minnesota, which does incredible research, might be impacted to the tune of $130 million. That is going to have a huge impact on what our state is able to do. We know that with U.S. aid, Minnesota farmers and Minnesota's economy might be impacted to the tune of $70 million in the commodities that we would sell.
This $4.5 trillion cost of extending the tax plan is the most ridiculous thing that I've heard in all my life covering Washington, D.C. That's a long time. Who's coming up with these made-up numbers when, in fact, the tax cuts of 2017, tax rate cuts, have brought in an extra $1.5 trillion? An extra. It's an adding to the budget, not a subtracting from the budget.
One of the things I'm most worried about, Ali, is that he's about to propose gutting Medicaid to the tune of $2.3 trillion in cuts, almost 1/3 of Medicaid, forcing tens of millions of Americans off Medicaid and their sole source of health care. We have to band together, and I think this is a moment where we're going to also have to hold vulnerable Republicans in marginal districts accountable for where they stand, because this hurts Republicans and Democrats alike.
And when you look at instance after instance where spending $1 million on a Sesame Street program in Iraq or DEI programs in Burma, I mean, those aren't things that advance American interest or American causes or freedom and independence for individuals in those countries. And so we've got to make sure that we're smart and we're prudent in terms of the money we do spend.
Every dollar put into the IRS in terms of its bandwidth and its capability earns the U.S. taxpayer somewhere between $5 and $10 back. Because what the IRS does is it goes and audits rich people who are trying to evade their taxes, and that makes the U.S. government money.
And what DOJ is doing to go into these systems using data to be able to reflect these numbers and see for a fact what we have been wasting and what has been fraudulently being spent across our country is very important of analysis for us to do, especially as Republicans, as we go into this process of budget reconciliation to cut as much spending as we possibly can to give the tax cuts to the American people.